Hello everyone, welcome to our Camino interview series. My name is Dennis Tam from Canadian Company of Pilgrims. In this interview series, we will be featuring distinguished pilgrims to talk about their unique Camino experience. And today, we will be featuring Judy and Dave Reano from Victoria, BC to talk about their unique Camino Primitivo walk. Hello, Judy and Dave. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Nice of you to have us.
Why don't we start with just talk about your background briefly and also your Camino walks at 2015 and also your Camino walks in 2019.
I've been retired for almost 20 years. And while I was working, I was a jack of all trades. But my last job was writing very boring statistical reports and for our client companies. Anyways, it was good to retire and think about writing something other than statistical reports. So I love to write about the Camino. We've been on 2 Caminos and they've been fantastic. But anyways, we started thinking about walking the Camino when we saw the movie The Way. And then when we moved to Victoria, or area of Victoria, and went to a few of the pilgrim gatherings and was really inspired just by hearing everybody's story. And then finally in 2013, our daughter Tanya went and walked the Camino. She was our greatest inspiration as well. I couldn't wait to get up in the middle of the night to hear what she'd written last about her previous day. And so then in 2015, she passed the baton to us and we went and walked the Camino Frances in 2015 in the fall. And it was just fantastic. We went back last year in the spring, 2019. And that time we walked the first part of the Camino del Norte, and then followed that up with walking all of the Camino Primitivo. Both Caminos have been fantastic.
Well, I've been retired about 23 years, maybe 24. Well, I worked for the BC government for 30 some odd years. And the last, it was always for mental health. But anyway, we decided on the Primitivo over having considered the Portuguese and the Norte, we just decided that we liked the wilderness more, and we weren't really into crowds too much, and we just enjoyed nature. So the best route seemed to be to start on the Norte and just transition to the Primitivo. So that's what we did.
Wow, that's truly a Camino family there. Judy, can you tell us about the background of Camino Primitivo?
It existed before the Camino Frances. The Primitivo was, I think, it came into existence early in the 9th century. At the time, most of Spain was controlled by the Moors, and only the northern part was independent. The king at the time was King Alfonso II in Asturias, and he was one of the ones who went to Santiago to confirm that the human remains in Santiago did indeed belong to the Apostle St. James. So then he is the one who collaborated, I guess, with others to create the pilgrimage, which I guess it's called the Orginal Way because it was the first one.
Why did you folks choose to walk the Camino Primitivo?
We had heard that it was a beautiful mountainous route, and when we were on the Camino Frances, our favorite part was, we liked going up to Osabrero, but best of all was going over the Pyrenees via the Napoleon route. So there was that appeal. It was the mountains and the beauty, and it certainly did. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
So where did you folks start your walk?
Started in Oviedo,
Yeah.
Which is the usual starting point.
Well, we did the Norte as long as we could before we ended up running out of time. So we went to as far as, what was that?
We went as far as Marquina,
Marquina. And then we went to
Guernica,
then Bilbao.
and then took a bus.
Then we took the bus to Oviedo. So it's it kind of goes together, although we could have used maybe 3 or 4 more days. But, yeah.
How is it different from Camino Frances?
Well, for one thing, it's shorter.
Yeah.
Also, there were a lot of untouched stretches of rugged countryside and just dotted with small villages and towns. There's really only 2 big cities, Oviedo and Lugo. We enjoyed both of them. They were beautiful. Also, it's the road less traveled, with only about 5% of the pilgrims going that way.
Yeah.
And so there was no pilgrim rush hour that you quite often get on the Camino Frances,
Yeah.
and the rush for beds at the end of the day. There was none of that on the Primitivo or the Norte.
No, in fact, if you're going, like the Norte, one of the things about that is the ocean. That's just gorgeous. But then going to the Primitivo, if you're on your own, you might not see anybody. Virtually everybody's going the same direction. So if you're kind of a kilometer after someone or before someone, it's likely to stay that way for some time. So I suggest that you have at least one person to walk with.
Yeah, it was good. Another thing that was different too, we had the impression that local people on the Primitivo paid more attention to pilgrims like us, because on the Frances, you're part of a stream of pilgrims going by. But we found that there were more locals on the Primitivo who said Buen Camino to us, whereas on the Frances, it was mostly other pilgrims who gave us that greeting.
Really, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How long was the trail and how many walking days were there?
The trail is 315 kilometers according to our Compostela. We took 19 days to do it, and we went from May the 14th to June the 1st. It was, so I guess that's fun.
I mean, we didn't do whole stages at any given time. We kind of kept it down to, our preferred distance is somewhere around 15 to 20 kilometers. We met 4 young people that did 40 some odd kilometers a day. Well, that's fine for them.
Yeah, but our shortest day was about 10 kilometers over very steep terrain, and our longest was 30 over flatter terrain.
That sounds fantastic. What season did you folks walk, and what was the weather like?
Oh, the weather was mostly sunny, although we did have some rain. Some of it was very heavy.
Yeah.
It was cold in the higher elevations and warm in the lower areas.
Yeah.
I know that once we went past a thermometer and it said it was 6 degrees, and that was up probably at one of the higher points of the trail.
Yeah, mind you, it could range to being cool, let's say at the top of the chain of mountains going across there. But you get down in the valleys, and I think it was about 34 degrees there in a few days. And then this is spring. So it can be warm.
Mm-hmm.
And when it rains, well, you just have to enjoy that. If you're not missing out on views and there's lots of mud, I mean, really, it's an experience.
Wow, it is.
We learned to have fun with it, actually.
Wow, living in Victoria, we definitely understand what that means. Well, you can see it as a liquid sunshine.
Yeah.
Anyhow, what guidebook did you folks use for your walk?
Yes, we did. We had the Cicerone Guidebook. I wouldn't recommend it. I know that there were a few times where we thought that the distances were wrong. There was another point where we were going to go across the dam to the other side. We knew we had to go across that river. There was a reservoir there and a dam. So we were going to have to go across it, but we kept on walking down past the dam, and we thought, where are we ever going to get across? So anyway, we thought we were going to have to backtrack, which is not something that pilgrims like to do. So anyway, we just went a little bit further and we saw that then the trail went and switched back down to the level, closer to the level of the water, and then went back and across the dam. But certainly our Cicerone guidebook didn't indicate that at all. So yeah, we were quite confused about it.
Yeah, there was two areas. The other area was trying to leave Lugo. We had no idea how to get out of Lugo and back on to the Camino.
No.
And a lot of people have no idea where it is. Like they're not really that aware the Camino is there either. So anyway, we did find someone that eventually pointed the way and we got going. And even then, I think we missed the green route.
We did,
yeah, so
unfortunately.
it's nicer to take a green route out of Lugo and not necessarily end up on Melide.
Ah, I see. Now, what was the accommodation like, and are there any places that you would recommend for future pilgrims?
Yes, so we had mostly good places to stay, although we had a couple that were disappointments. But our very favorite was halfway between, where was it? Cadavo Valera and Lugo. That day would have been 33.3 kilometers to walk it in one stage, according to our book.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, we stopped partway, and it was our favorite place of all. Actually, it was better than any place, any albergue we've ever stayed in. It's called A Cocina de Muniz, and it's in Vilar de Cas. It's a brand new place. I think it opened in 2018.
Yeah, brand new.
Beautiful. It had spa-like showers. It had curtains around your bunk beds, satin curtains.
Yeah.
They had original artwork on the walls and a Martha Stewart picture.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, but that's between us in the middle of a stage again.
Yeah.
And if you want to avoid rush hour, even on the Camino Frances, you get in between. You leave later and get in between stages and stay there, sort of thing. But the accommodation, I'll say this about the Primitivo, you might get an opinion that there's not much around there or something, but it seems to me it was quite adequate. We had no problems, and of course, we don't always stay in albergues. We may stay in a hostel or a B&B or something, so you can kind of use them when there isn't one.
Now, what was the most rewarding moment of your Camino Primitivo walk?
All right. We had a lot on the day that we walked between Tineo and Campeello. The whole day was stunning, and we couldn't even put our camera away because there was always another picture to take around the next corner. And then the next, that same day we went to the was it 8th century 8th century cathedral. It was the what was it called? Santa Maria Urbana Monastery. It was a little 1 kilometer detour off of the main route. Yeah. So we went there, and we were like, I think there was only about 3 of us there at that cathedral. It was just the way it had been damaged a lot in the 19th century. But it just sits there like it's amazing. It's overgrown, but it's just fantastic to wander around in there. We should have probably walked over the Hospitalis route. It leads you away from civilization for most of the day. So you have to make sure you have food with you. Yeah. But if the weather's good, if it's not foggy or raining too much, that's the way to go. It's absolutely stunning. Yeah. There's a choice though. You can either go the Hospitalis or the Pola route. Maybe
I should say something here. It depends a bit on your age too. So like there's age, weather, just plain clouds, temperature. A Hospitalis route, if you can get close to the trailhead, you would have about a little over 24 kilometers to go, and you have to go up and down about 1,000 meters. And the Hospitalis route has some rolling parts to it. So, but if you're right close to it, if you're far away from it, like we were about 5-6 kilometers back of that, so it'd make it far too long. The other thing is, if it's going to rain tomorrow, definitely do it. If it's cloudy now and the Hospitalis route's all foggy, you don't see anything. It'd just be too long a day, and there's no facilities.
No, so if we would recommend going the Hospitalis route because of the stunning scenery, but to stay in
Yeah.
Boris, or there's a little albergue right where the two routes divide, and it's called the Samblissimo albergue.
Yeah.
So it's very small. You have to make sure you get a reservation there.
But you do get the same scenery, just not so much of it. Like when you're going out of Pola, you'll get the scenery about an hour later, I guess, and you get the scenery for about an hour and a half or so, and then you're up on top, and then you get the scenery down the other side. Both trails get the same scenery. So there's not that much of a difference.
No.
And of course, you want to see Pola. Well, it's not a bad little town as well. The albergue was sort of the pits, but
So, but I would
Anyway.
say the Polar route would be a 4-star, but the Hospitalis would have been 5.
Well, it sounds like there's lots of options. Now, can you talk about the challenging moments of your Camino Primitivo walk?
Oh, yes, the challenging moment was one, and that was when we lost our clothes in one
We
day to
lost our
go to
clothes.
Santiago. So what happened was we stayed in a place. It was
was
like a
open.
B&B, but I think there was only one other person staying there, and it was a private room. So anyway, we got cleaned up as usual and washed our clothes, and then we went to see where we could hang them out, and there happened to be a very convenient clothes rack right outside of our second floor window. So we hung our clothes up there, and we didn't have any clothes pegs, but no problem, right? Because there was no wind. There was no chance they'd fall off the clothes rack. Well, guess what? When we came back from our meal, we went to bring in our dry clothes, and they were down on the walled courtyard down below. And of course, Dave went looking for an entrance to the walled courtyard, and there was none, not from our building. The receptionist was away. She's gone for the day, and she wasn't back by the time we left the next day. So we just had to leave a note about where we would be the following day. Could she please get our clothes and send them to us by courier? Anyways, we never did get our clothes. But in the meantime, I had to wear the clothes that I normally wore to bed. So anyway, that was our most challenging day.
Yeah, I mean, the rain really wasn't a challenge. If you get your what do you call it, that thing I wear?
Oh, your poncho.
My poncho. There's nothing like a nice poncho you hide underneath, and it was just fine. The heat was a problem once in a while, and that dam, when we were trying to get up to the place we were going to stay, virtually it was like 34 degrees. And one time later than that, it was probably about the same temperature, and we had this big hill to go up. And we would go from shadow to shadow and just sort of think maybe we can make this next 200 feet. I mean, it was just hot.
Yeah,
So, you have to be prepared for pretty much all weather. So.
Yeah. And it's funny, after we got to the top of that hill, after going from one patch of shadow to the next, we got to a place where we could have a beer and sitting at an outdoor table. And we saw people who just finished doing the same hill that we had finished, and they were like, thumbs up. And we thought, oh, what?
Well, again, I think this happens when you get older, maybe. Maybe it's a matter of age.
Well, those challenge moments definitely make your Camino experience very unique. Now, what was the food like there?
Oh, the food. We normally chose the pilgrim meal for about 12 euros a person. And it was substantial. And I guess, and then, also, if you like, I had a very unusual pescado or fish dish once. Yeah. And then once I was served some pulpo, but I didn't know at the time just exactly what that was. And of course it's octopus. And I was sitting at an outdoor canteen where we were staying, our favorite albergue of all. And the mom, who was doing the cooking, brought me out, and she doesn't speak English. She brought me out this plate of popo and put it on my table. And David, the English-speaking son, said to me that this is something they usually have on Sundays. So anyway, I thought, well, I've never wanted to eat popo, and I've never had it. And so I had to be polite and eat it. And it wouldn't have been so bad, but all these suction cups were standing straight up on this dish. And my stomach was going in a real turmoil. But anyway, I did manage to eat most of it.
Oh, well. You weren't grasshoppers.
No.
Well, I guess no popo for you, or no popo palami.
Yes.
Anyhow, can you talk about the towns and villages that you walked by there?
Oh, yeah. So there were really only two big cities, and then there were some large towns. What were the, like Tineo, what were the other ones? Salas, Grado, Brandas de Salime. One of we really like the small towns though, and one of our favorites was Castro. And
really
it was really interesting. There's a highly recommended youth hostel in Castro where we wanted to stay, and I had made a reservation there, but the hospitalera had no record of our reservation. Mm-hmm. So anyway, she very kindly phoned up the only other place to stay there, which is a tiny little hotel, and thank heavens they had a vacancy. So we didn't have to backtrack. We couldn't have gone ahead because it was way too far, and we would have had to go back about 5 kilometers. Anyway, we did get a room, and then we got cleaned up and then went back to the youth hostel. They've got a canteen at the back and a beautiful garden and tables and chairs. So you could order a vegetarian meal. I think we had soup and sandwich or something like that, and sat outside in the garden. And it was just lovely. Also, another interesting thing to do in Castro would be to go to their the dig. They're doing an archaeological dig there of some old ruins from, I think, 3,000 years ago. And they do give tours there. So if you go to the museum, they'll give you a tour. I think the tour was at 5 o'clock every day. So, but we didn't do that. It would have been an interesting thing to do. Yeah.
Now, since Camino Primitivo and Camino Frances joined together at the town of Melide, was it a shock for you first to see the volume of pilgrims along Camino Frances?
Oh, yeah. It was a real shock. I couldn't believe the number of people, but of course it's within the 100 kilometers from Santiago. Yeah. And so a lot of people just do the last 100 kilometers so as to receive their Compostela in Santiago. On the other hand, you can do an alternate route, the green route from Lugo. Yeah. It actually takes you over to the Camino del Norte, and from there are 3 choices. You can actually, the best one, I think, would be to take the route that takes you to La Coya. So you only have part of a day and you're in Santiago from there.
I see. Do you have any advice for pilgrims who might be thinking to walk Camino Primitivo in the future?
Sure. I would say, number 1, we mentioned that before, is to take the Hospitalis route if at all possible. Yeah. It's maybe a good thing always to have some emergency food on hand. That is one day where you'll need it, definitely going the Hospitalis route. Mm-hmm. Then I would say take the green route from Lugo, which we mentioned as well, and go at your own pace. Don't rush it. Just enjoy every moment and be open to whatever experience that is.
Well, that last one you said about taking your own time, that's kind of nice. Whenever we go and do a Camino, we're not doing it just to kind of tick it off, and it's just not a conquest, but rather we make a vacation out of it. And we make sure we have enough time, like maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, to see the place that we're going to, and then carry on the next day to another place. Another thing that you might have problems with is how to get there in the first place. And if you're coming from North America, you sort of avoid going to London, because you have to change airports at London to fly to Spain, and that airport takes you like 2 or 3 hours by bus to get to it. It's just a terribly long time. So probably the best way is to go to Madrid, take a plane or a train to Oviedo, and away you go.
Good, good. Well, thank you so much, David and Judy, for sharing your valuable information on Camino Primitivo. If you want to read more about Judy and Dave's Camino experience, you can go to the blog site. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until we see you folks next time, Buen Camino.
Buen Camino.
Okay, Buen Camino. Bye.